Welcome to Frickety Frack. We do talk back. Thank you for joining us in this episode.
Hello, my name is Patrick, and I'm Frack.
Hello, my name is Jeff, and I'm Frick. Frickety Frack, We Do Talk Back is a show where we will discuss different aspects of fandom and how they relate to the gospel. Currently, we are going through the Prime Video series Invincible and connecting lessons from each episode to teachings in the Bible. Now, just as many of you are, we are also fans of other things as well. So when we finish with Invincible, we'll go in a different direction, and we could be looking at anything ranging from anime, comics, video games, movies, or anything else that we're just generally fans of. We got the name of the show from our father, who dubbed us as Frick and Frack since we were kids.
So this episode is entitled Here Goes Nothing. And so this episode begins with the Burger Mart trash bag that Mark flung from last episode comes falling down from the sky and nearly takes out the security guard from the White House and his stepson, but the kid saves him and calls him dad. We then meet Cecil and his troops as they discover the Guardians had been killed and Omni-Man was knocked out and in a coma. Afterwards, Debbie notices Nolan never came home and misses him. Mark doesn't really think anything of it when all of a sudden federal agents come to take them to Nolan. Cecil explains what little evidence they have and the fact that they know very little. They then get an alarm that there is an attack going on downtown. Invincible arrives to fight, but starts off doing a very terrible job until Adam, Eve, and the rest of the team arrive. Robot gives them directions, and Adam Eve gives Mark protection long enough for him to get a very injured lady to the Hero Hospital. Robot doesn't think they will win when all of a sudden the army starts to rapidly age and die. And the rest run away. As Mark gets the woman to the hospital, he is overwhelmed with his inability to be like his father. Mark goes to school in a daze when he runs into William and tells him that his dad was attacked. William says he'll be there for him when he sees Eve in her civilian clothes. They share secret identities and go to talk about being a hero. Mark complains about how useless he was, and he talks him through it and invites him to meet the team. Robot and Cecil debrief over the Flaxen invasion. Cecil leaves and arrives at the murder scene of the Guardians when their breath starts showing. Damien Darkblood appears, and he says he has started his investigation. Amber approaches Mark about his fight, and then he quickly leaves with Eve. They fly through the city having fun with each other, and they eventually make it to the team's HQ. Rexplode teases him, and the others introduce themselves as well. Robot informs him of the nature of the Flaxens and says they will be who Cecil and the GDA call on for help since the Guardians are MIA. Mark goes back to the hospital to talk to his dad, and his mom checks on him. He also checks on the woman he brought there as well. As Eve and Mark are at school, the Flaxens return, and they go to fight them again. They notice they aren't getting older and go to stop them anyways. The Flaxens are prepared for the teens until the leader tries to kill Eve. Mark breaks through and destroys his wristband, and the heroes change tactics and win the day. Mark gets the call that Nolan is awake and can go home. He's not 100%, but he's going home. Mark checks on Maya, and the woman he saved, and found that she had died from her injuries. Omni-Man gets his costume back in a very forceful manner. Nolan and Mark train when Cecil arrives to recruit him to fight an incoming invader. He sent Mark instead, and he fights Alan the alien. During the fight, Mark calls a timeout and finds out that Alan has been coming to the wrong planet this whole time. And as Mark is coming back, Cecil questions Nolan again about the attack. Mark's bully apologizes to him for fighting and gives him Amber's number. And as Todd walks away, Mark gets a call about the Flaxen army invading once again. Robot explains the dire situation as they enter battle. Invincible is getting beaten when Omni-Man arrives. He defeats them easily and hits the leader into a portal and follows. Debbie doesn't think anything of it, In the portal, you see Nolan destroying the Flaxen Empire. He arrives home later that evening when the Guardians of the Globe are announced as dead. Damien Darkblood tells Cecil that the murderer must be one of the Guardians. Cecil threatens him and then has a surveillance team put on the Grayson family.
All right, so this is the second episode of the first season of Invincible. So we do still have some first appearances for this in this episode, and some actually really important ones for the Invincible series going forward. The first appearance of the Teen Team, which that includes Robot, Rexplode, Adam Eve, Duplicate, and I think that's it, right? That's all. That's all of the Teen Team so far. And then we also got introduced to Cecil, the Global Defense Agency, or the GDA, Alan the Alien, and the Coalition of Planets. Well, obviously we didn't really meet the Coalition of Planets, but they're brought up for the first time.
One of the things that's also different in this episode from the comics is that the Burger Mart bag lands in front of a random weirdo, not the security guard from the White House. And now the whole security guard thing from the first episode, I mentioned this because the Mark throwing things randomly is a running gag through the comic, and so that's the reason why I bring it up.
I think it's actually great. It is something that genuinely did happen in the comics. At some random point in the series, the Burger Mart trash bag lands on the ground, and it lands in an area where Burger Mart is not, and it's kind of like, what is this? And it's just like, oh, that's it. And one of the things that's so great, it wasn't like it was the next issue like it is with the series, but again, that's fine, like, because again, it's not that big of a deal. It still has that same impact where it's like, because again, with as bloody as the show is, the way that it explodes, you think some random body just fell out of the sky. Right. No, it was Mark's burger mat bag. And so again, I loved that they did this. Mm-hmm. I still annoyed about the security guard from the White House. The fact that he still, it serves it serves no other purpose. Like all of that, like that stupid trying to, pull at your heartstrings or whatever in the first couple of minutes of the episode. And again, fortunately, this was much shorter, and so it wasted so much less of your time. But again, I still feel cheated the fact that this is still occurring, that this is still there, and again, does not serve a purpose to the story overall. It could have just been some random people talking and like taking pictures in front of Nottingham Palace, which is where they were. And
Buckingham Palace.
What did I say?
Nottingham.
That's my bad. That's Robin Hood. In my defense, within the last couple of days or so, I have watched Robin Hood Men in Tights. So my bad. So I got Robin Hood on the brain a little bit. My bad.
That's all right.
But yeah, so they're in front of Buckingham Palace and the Burger Mart bag lands. I still pissed that it's them. And I still have to hear them and think of them.
I'm pretty sure this is the last episode they're in. I don't think they're in any more. It's one more. Okay.
Actually, well, I don't think the security guard is, but the son is. The son is another.
That's right. So this whole episode is based around Mark really getting his feet wet in the hero world. And so this is going to get into more of the biblical theme too, but this is also another big difference from the comics. And I mentioned this in our last episode, that Mark struggles to be a hero in this series, where in the comics he took to it like fish and water.
Right.
He never really struggled all that much. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. That's one of the great things about the Invincible series. But I mean, he was pretty much primed and ready to go. This is showcases it not well at all, that he's not ready. And I really do like that.
So and again, like we'll do this sporadically throughout as we talk about what we liked about the episode and things that we thought about. But this is one of the things that is, if I remember correctly, the Flaxens, that was purely always an Omni-Man Invincible thing. The team never got involved with the Flaxens, if I remember correctly.
They did because, well, not the team, because they definitely did when the team gets promoted to the Guardians of the Globe. Robot and Monster Girl go to the Flaxen Empire.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
at this stage of the story, this was, if I remember, this was purely a Omni-Man Invincible thing that they dealt with.
correct.
But it does in the comics, it does eventually happen where it's the each time the Flaxens come back, they have their technology advanced a little bit, and they come up with this new thing, and that's, I absolutely love that. It's just like, oh, please tell me they're going to start aging soon. Please, like, as I'm watching the episode, I was like, oh, tell me they're going to age. Tell me they're going to age. Oh, yes, they're aging. Yes. And then when they come back the second time, that is what's happened. In the second time that they come back, is that they have I thought it was, for some reason, I'm thinking in the comics it was collars. But anyways, regardless, they had some.
I think you're right. I think it was collars.
But again, wristbands, collars, who cares?
Right.
But regardless, they came up with technology because, again, it was decades for them that they came up with the technology. Like, okay, if we wear these things, we'll sync up with the time. And so then they're like, all right, we'll just smash these things. And then they instantly start dying and they retreat again. In the comics, is it 3 times that they show up before when Omni-Man gets captured?
No, I don't think so. Like, I think he gets snatched in the very first one.
Oh well, I mean, it's they do show up multiple times.
Yeah,
and so they're actually a fun little nemesis for them, and I genuinely enjoyed it, and I really like that they kept it. And especially, the other thing is that one of the things that happens is that the leader stayed, like, he's the one that has the scar, and he's the one that keeps coming back in the comics. I think they come up with like words for Invincible and Omni-Man, like how they're the devil or something along those lines.
I think Omni-Man is referred to as the Great Destroyer, I think.
Yeah, I don't remember that specifically, but it's something like that. I totally agree.
I think that's what they call him.
Something.
Yeah. Well,
let me tell you, this is something they didn't do in the comics that I'm really glad that they did, is they showed what Omni-Man did to them.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, did he go to town on the Flaxens? And it's like, it was a bad day to be a Flaxen.
Yeah.
And I even love that, like, because I think the Flaxens showed up before it was revealed in the comics. They showed up before the Omni-Man reveal.
Yeah, they showed up before he killed the Guardians.
So but again, I like, so that's one of the things that's fun about the show, is that they can do that. It's like, okay, well, we've already had that big reveal, which, again, doing it in the first episode was the right call, in my opinion.
I agree.
But showing what Omni-Man did to them, and it's just like, oh, and I just love the line too. And it's just like, you seem to have a misunderstanding. This is not your planet to conquer. And then just goes to town. And so, yeah, it was really cool. And then on top of it too, it's like those, like, you can even see, like, a little bit in the way that they went with how they drew his, like, Omni-Man's reactions and facial movements in the episode is kind of like, ooh, I've got an idea. And so then it's just like, and it's like, he didn't do it, but it's just like, in like my head, I kind of picture him going, like, kind of like cracking his neck and like limbering up a little bit and being like, all right, ain't nobody around, I can show you the real me. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what, and that's with his line. That's what he was able to do. He showed you the real him.
Right. And did it for a long time too. Like,
Yeah,
because before his time is ended in the Flaxen world, he'd already grown a beard.
yeah,
And which is telling you something about how powerful he is, because he killed nonstop. And I'll tell you, like, if I had the facial hair he did and just had a mustache, it would take me a really long time. It would take several days, if not like a couple weeks, to grow in a full beard
yeah.
if I was clean shaven.
Or well, I mean, not just a beard, but like a beard to that level.
Exactly.
It
I
would
mean,
take it would take.
it would take a few weeks, um, standard time. Um, uh, Continuing with you know the alien invasion, uh, Mark tried to save a woman but made it worse. Like, that's Maya that I referenced in the synopsis, and we've talked about this a little bit too. Jeff, with your lifeguarding and stuff, about having the responsibility to protect someone. You first have to protect yourself to be able to save them, and um, and Mark didn't get that. But on top of it, it wasn't like, oh, I need to let her take this damage so that we can save everyone. No, 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 no. Mark did everything, the quote unquote right way to save her, sort of. But gosh, if I'm not gonna lie, if I was Mark, even though I had superpowers, I'd be like, after that first time, I'm like, I'm done. I'm At least let me get better training. I can't do this.
Yeah.
um,
Well, yeah, and especially because um, like he squishes her. Like, I think, right? Am I
he
am I
lands on
misinterpreting
top.
it? Yeah.
He lands on top of her, and who
Yeah, so he
knows?
squishes her. And
Yeah, but
so yeah,
yeah,
it's rough. And like and I get that. It's just like and then on top of it too, he's really new to his powers. So he doesn't have the touch. Like he doesn't have that control yet. Then on top of it too, he's freaking out. And so it's real. Like that's one of the things that as if you do read the comics of Invincible, which I hope you do, because it's such a great series. It it takes you have to throw a little bit of disbelief in there, in there just because there's people's superpowers, but it's a pretty realistic take. I feel like in the series because, and then on top of it, and then they're transferring it to the animated series, and so yeah, it's like this guy is basically Superman, and he's just got his powers, and he's out there trying to save a lady from an alien invasion, and winds up, I mean, he kills her. He's the one that kills her. Um, as horrible as it sounds, his actions are what killed her. It wasn't malicious intent or anything like that, but it's what he did, and so it's just
right. Well, she would have been
um,
killed anyways by the invasion,
right,
but
right. That's true. So she was about to die, but he's the one that actually killed her. And so yeah, I'm with you, Patrick. I would be really hard pressed to get back into action if I I mean, it's one thing for it to just happen and you not realize it, but because again, this is like I I train in CPR. I work with firefighters and I work with paramedics, and so it's just that when you're breaking bones, like when you're doing CPR, like that's one of the things that you have to be prepared for if you're ever doing CPR is that you might hear ribs crack.
yeah,
You might break some ribs doing CPR. You'll save their life, but you'll know it. Like you'll hear them pop, and so it's an interesting sensation. And so it's just like and can really mess with you. And so, like, I can only imagine what Mark was feeling in that situation when he accidentally crushed her in his attempts to save her.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
so one of the people that gets introduced in this episode that we already brought up, and his name is Alan the Alien, and he is one of our favorite characters, bar none.
he
And
would
he is
probably be on
also
my
just
Mount Rushmore of characters for Invincible. He would be
the
like
Mount
some of my
Rushmore.
top four.
The Mount Rushmore is easy for Invincible, in my opinion. It's Mark, Omni Man, Adam Eve, and Alan. Those are the four. If you're going to do a Mount Rushmore of Invincible, those are who you put up there. Um, and Alan is a phenomenal character. I can't wait till we get to see more of him. We don't see a whole lot of him in season one, but he's great in what he's in.
Yeah.
And as the series progresses, and I think they've already announced season two. Did they already announce season three for
Yeah.
Invincible?
They've
Okay.
already got it set up for season 3.
So as the series progresses, and we know we've already got up to season three at least, with as good as it is and how good they've done, I suspect we're going to get the whole shebang. I think we're going to get the whole series of Invincible, and if they don't, it's a trap. That's a travesty. Anyways,
Right.
um, but as we get to know more of Alan, Alan is an absolutely phenomenal character. Absolutely love him. I'm not the biggest Seth Rogen fan, but if he wasn't put on this earth to voice Alan the Alien, I don't know what else he was supposed to do, because
Right.
he is flat out perfect as Alan the Alien. Actually, you know what? To be honest, I know we brought this up in the first episode. They absolutely nailed the casting for this series.
Yeah.
Zachary Quinto is voices Robot, absolutely phenomenal. And I mean, basically, I mean, honestly, at this stage of what Robot is, he's Spock. And
Right.
so Zachary Quinto is an absolutely phenomenal Spock. Don't at me. It's the truth. Get over it. Um, but yeah, and then I forget her name. Let me look it up real fast.
Talk about Jillian Jacobs.
Jillian Jacobs, yes, and she was in Community. I love Community, and she's the voice of Adam Eve, and she does a really great job with her.
She's the only one that I actually struggled with the most uh, with her casting, because it seemed, because in Community she's a blonde,
Yeah,
and
probably she's a blonde in real life.
oh, is she? Okay, I just didn't know. Uh, um,
Well, I mean, that's what she's normally is like. So whether or not it's a dye job, it's what I mean. It's whatever.
right. Anyway, so I don't know. I struggled with her. By the end of the series, I was like, okay, I'm good. But when I read Invincible comics, like, I hear Stephen Yen's voice. Now I hear Seth Rogen's voice. Uh, J.K. Simmons. I don't hear hers. Like, that's my only struggle, is like, I don't hear her speak for Adam Eve. And I don't know
Please,
who I
please
really
tell
hear.
me, please tell me you hear. Oh, I'm gonna butcher this. Sorry in advance. Jason Mantzoukas. I think that Mantzoukas or as Rexplode. Please tell me you hear him, because he's absolutely perfect.
Oh
He's an
yeah,
absolutely perfect Rexplode.
yes, I hear him
Ab-
perfectly too.
Absolutely perfect Rexplode. Nails it out of the park, and he just plays in anything that he is in. He's generally plays very crazy people, and
Mhm.
he does it well. And they tend to be jerks too. Again, plays it well. I 100% believe, just by just seeing him as an actor, I bet you he's probably one of the nicest people in the world. I don't, please don't vouch, don't take me at my word for that, because I could very well be wrong. I've never really heard anybody say anything about him. But generally, people that do characters like that are generally actually very nice people. And also tend to be a little more down to earth than other people.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me if he's like, oh yeah, I got to dig deep for these characters. You wouldn't believe, like, it's like, this is so against who I am as a person.
Yeah.
But he does, like, he's absolutely phenomenal. He's phenomenal in the episodes that he's in, and like he's in, he shows up in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, he shows up in Parks and Rec, a bunch of stuff. He's in a bunch of stuff. And he genuinely, he absolutely nails that as Rex Explode. Absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
Oh, and Walton Goggins, he's the guy that he was in Ant-Man and the Wasp. He was the guy that was trying to get, oh man, I'm
Pym's
trying to
Lab.
remember. Yeah, he's trying to get Pym's lab, and he's the voice of Cecil. Um, I,
He was
I
in
like
The Shield. Um, what other shows was he in? He was in something.
I like him as Cecil, but to me, he's not a home run like some of the people that we've just been talking about. He's not like Seth or Jason, as far
Mhm.
as I'm concerned, or and actually, in my opinion as well, Jillian. I think Jillian does a phenomenal job as Adam Eve. Um, and again, I'm not saying he did a bad job, because I think he actually did a very good job, but he's just not a voice that I hear. Just kind of like how you're talking about with Adam Eve. He's not the voice that I hear when I read Invincible comics. When it comes to Cecil, like, I hear a deeper voice than Walton.
Yeah, I
Um,
usually hear like a
someone,
Sam Elliott type.
yes, like Sam is. I actually go. I go Clint Eastwood. Like, that's actually kind of closer to the type of voice that I hear with Cecil.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, but again, and as this season progresses, Walton does a very good job with Cecil.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so and actually, and while we're talking about Cecil, that's also one of the differences, is that Cecil and the GDA is introduced much earlier than he is in the comics.
Yeah.
Uh, he in the time frame of when Cecil would be introduced in the comics, if they stayed true to the comics, Cecil would actually be introduced at the end of the season. Uh, with what happens at the end of the season, that's when Cecil would have actually been introduced. Um, so I'm kind of torn about them introducing Cecil so early. It's not I'm not 100% opposed, but I'm definitely not 100% on board. And I think, did they change? I want to make sure I didn't mess this up. With the GDA, did they say that they don't specifically work with Omni-Man? Because in the comics, he did. Like, they actually straight up says, like, oh yeah, no, I was the voice. And when Cecil's introduced in the comics, he's like, no, I was the voice in the earpiece.
Yeah.
Uh,
It was Omni-Man just wasn't a part of the Guardians. Like they would send him.
Debbie even said, it's just like, you're not his boss, or he doesn't work for you. She made that statement.
Mhm.
Um, so that's one of the things that I actually don't like, that they took that away, because that was something that was, like, very crucial to the very beginning. But they do make it clear that they have an existing relationship, that they do work with each other. It's just that Nolan never just worked for them or whatever. He just happened to work with them. It's more of a, we work. He's more like an outside contractor, consultant sort of thing, instead of
Right.
actually working with them. Um, and again, that's a very small, minor thing in the grand scheme of Invincible. But yeah, so for me, I'm not the biggest fan of that change.
Yeah.
Um,
Then the other big change was Cecil. Is that Cecil and Damien Darkblood are already suspicious of Nolan from the
yeah,
get-go. And because I remember when in the comics reading it, and Cecil finds out Omni-Man is evil, I was like, how did you not see this coming? Now, granted, I'm reading everything. I know the whole story. But it's also like, why didn't you even think that it was Omni-Man? Like, uh, I mean, it's just clear in the comics he was
Well, I mean,
taken by surprise.
one of the big things though that is different about the comics in the show is that Omni Man is not left at the scene. So
Yeah, that's
he in
true.
the comics, the Guardians don't do anything to him. He just wipes them out.
Yeah,
Um, and then leaves. In the show, he got beat up bad. Like he took a
right.
licking. And so he was left on scene. So I can see where it wouldn't make sense. I could see where they would be suspicious of Nolan, especially since he's left at the scene. And it's like, well, really, in all honesty, the only person that probably really could do that is, the guy that's still alive. Uh,
Right. And
but
it's funny,
I'll
like,
me for me personally, there's something about, to me, it makes the betrayal worse from Omni Man in the fact that nobody saw it coming, that nobody even realized it was him until the end of the season, and with what happens at the end of the season. Uh, so for me, and we'll get into this more when we get to the season finale. But for me, it's one of the things that actually I like the comic version better with the fact that Damien Darkblood, no clue,
yeah,
no clue. And
I
in
love it.
fact, actually, let me go ahead and spoil this. Let me go ahead and spoil this. So if anybody doesn't want to be spoiled with this, go ahead and skip ahead a minute. Damien Darkblood in the comics, 100% had no idea what was going on. Absolutely no clue. And then on top of it too, once it all comes out, once it's figured out what Omni Man has actually done, and by the end of this first season, it's going to come out what happened. Damien Darkblood, a little while after all of this happened and everybody knows everything, still has no idea that that's what happened, because he comes and reports to Cecil. And it's like, okay, so I've got a theory about what happened to the Guardians, blah blah blah, and it's like it could potentially be like alien parasites, something nonsensical like that. I don't remember what it is specifically, but he says something like that. He's like, "No, it was Omni Man." He's like, and he's just like, "You're like the worst detective ever." It's like, so again, for the comedic purposes of the story, I'm upset that that's now taken from us.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong, Clancy Brown as Damien Darkblood, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. But I'm gonna miss that. Like I'm genuinely gonna miss that. That's what happened. That we're not gonna get that in the show.
yeah,
I really am.
I
I
agree.
really 100% am. I am upset that we got robbed of that, because it's absolutely just perfect, absolutely perfect.
We've kind of already touched on it a little bit, but our biblical passage that we are really kind of connecting to this episode is Matthew chapter 7, verse 13 through 14. And this is what the gospel says: Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction. And those who enter by it are many, for the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. So this verse was the one that we chose because when we looked at really kind of what the whole central focus of this episode was, being prepared and finding out that things are hard. So we've touched on this, that one of the things that I love the most about the differences between the comic and this cartoon is, Mark is not good from the get-go. And in this episode, Mark even mentions to his mom that Omni-Man never mentioned and told him and prepared him for how difficult it was being a hero. And luckily, he's met Eve and you know, is getting that friendship with another hero his own age. and she, talks to him about how she used to puke before every battle. And he's just keeps going on. It's like, I thought this would be easier. I'd punch the aliens, they'd go away, big bang boom, it's done. And Eve's like, the first time's always difficult. It's never an easy thing to do. And Debbie even mentions, it's like, yeah, Nolan's not great about talking about his feelings and how he feels about battle and everything. And so that's one of those interesting things that, that's really uh, a different thing for, Nolan. He's like, because he's used to it. And um, and so combat comes naturally to him, where that's not the case for Mark. He is not used to combat and is definitely not used to war, because that's what was happening, was that they were being invaded by an alien force, and they were there to fight. He had to fight an army. And so with this scripture that, Jesus tells people that, enter by the narrow gate, and the narrow gate is hard. uh, but it's that narrow gate that leads to life. And so it's that same thing with being a hero in the Invincible world, is that, yeah, sure, there's plenty of heroes, but to be successful, it's difficult work. And we'll kind of get a little bit more into this later, that the Guardians aren't, I do apologize for this spoiler, but the Guardians aren't, when the team become the new Guardians, they're not very good. They struggle, and that's true to the comics as well. And so being an efficient and well-oiled machine and being a good hero, it takes a lot of hard work. And so for us as Christians, we have Jesus's grace. That's something that we receive from him. We've never deserved it. We don't earn it. It's something that is Jesus gave to us when he died on the cross and was resurrected on the third day. But life as a Christian it's narrow. Jesus is giving us a path on what we're supposed to follow and what life looks like for Christians. And it will be difficult, not impossible, but it takes but life in Jesus is hard, because we don't get to do whatever we want. We're called to do what Jesus wants with our lives. And so for us as followers of Christ, it's something for us to consider, that now at the time of the recording of our podcast, we're in the season of Lent, and this is a time where we're supposed to be growing as disciples of Jesus Christ. And for us to do that, it takes discipline and a path to follow. And so it's just something for us as Christians to follow. Are we on that path?
Well, and the big thing too, when it comes to this particular verse, and this is one of my favorite verses, it comes from the Sermon on the Mount, which is just chock full of great mess. It's just one great message after another. And so, and it's one of the things that is very true. And it's, in all honesty, it's one of the most um honest verses. I feel like, as weird as it might be to say that, it's one of the most honest verses as to what it's like to be a Christian. Because there are so many times that, and again, we're talking about authentically following Christ can be very challenging, in the aspect that you're going to be walking a different path than everybody else. You should and sound and look different than everybody else, because of the way that you choose to hold yourself, the way that you react to things, the way that you act, uh, the way that you talk, and your motivations. They're going to be different than everybody else for the most part. And it's like, they'll be, people will be like, oh, you don't do that. It's like, no, I don't do that. Um, and so it's one of the things that is it's and it's going to be really tempting to get off the narrow path, because you look at the wide path. For one, it's generally speaking, there's more people on it, and so there's more instances that you're going to feel like um, you can. There's going to be times you're going to feel more accepted. You're going to feel like you fit in, and these are things that we as humans struggle with. We feel we want to fit in. We want people to like us. We want to feel like we belong, and it's very easy to get caught up in everything and to think that uh, in order to have that feeling, we need to be on the wide path. Whereas when you get into that authentic Christ following, and then on top of it, you're also with other authentic Christ followers, you do still get that same camaraderie. You still feel like you belong. Um, but like I said, this is one of the most honest verses I feel like that there is in the Bible about of, of preparing you to how you are going, what's it's going to feel like when you're a Christian. It's very easy to get off the path that God has intended for us, and it's because it's going to be easier. It's going to lead towards uh, feeling different things that may, in the instant, may feel good, but you'll regret later. Um, and again, it's going to be the path that the rest of the world is on. So there's that. You're going to feel like you're belonging to people that you shouldn't be belonging to. Uh, but it's the same thing. And again, so it's like kind of what Patrick's talking about. It's very honestly, it's also very same thing when it comes to if you're Mark Grayson and you're developing these superpowers and you want to become a better superhero. It's not, you can't just become one overnight. It's not, you don't just snap your fingers and all of a sudden you know exactly how to do everything and do everything properly. There's not a single superhero that should ever be like that for it. There's a growing curve. There's a learning curve and a grow, you got to grow. So um but so honestly, when it comes, but more importantly, what it is about your walk. And it is very easy to take shortcuts uh, and go in a direction that you shouldn't go. And so it's something that um I think is very important for us. This is a very important verse for us to remember when it comes to your walk, is that it's easy to not be on the right path, and you may even enjoy it, but ultimately it's going to be taking you towards in a direction that you don't want to go. All right, how would you rate this episode?
Probably should have thought this through, but my gut reaction is my gut reaction is 4.5 for this episode. It's just slightly a little bit below perfect. Because as I've said, this will seem slightly hypocritical of me, but I wish to have seen Mark actually accomplish something more in the fight against the Flaxens. Um, I mean, I understand he's getting used to these powers, but I don't know. The fact that the only time he actually
Well,
even
in the second go around with them, he he gets upset and saves Adam Eve. And
right,
so like
but he doesn't do that until after he gets upset. Like I wanted to see him actually, especially in the second, like the first time, perfect. That was the perfect thing to do because he's having a panic attack. He's covered in blood. That's fine. The second time, like he's basically gooed from the get go. I kind of wanted to have see him at least accomplish something before that. But like I said, that's my preference. Uh, so that's my only real knock against it is that is even though I've said I've loved that he struggled from the beginning and being a hero, he still should have been able to do something. So that's why it's a 4.5 instead of a 5. What about you?
I would have actually given this a 4.75 with only just being shy of perfect. But what's preventing me from giving it a 4.5, and I'm going to bump it down to a 4.5 to match you, is the first minute of the show. Again, the stupid freaking security guard. I don't care about John Hamm in this show. Move on. I'm done. I'm done with him. But there's so much about this show, this episode, that was just absolutely perfect. I loved the Alan and Mark fight. Absolutely loved it. It was phenomenal.
Absolutely.
It's
Wholeheartedly agree.
It's basically just like it's longer than it was in the comics, the actual fight aspect of it, but the fact that they, you know, sit and have a chat because, and I think he does call the timeout in the comics, I think, right? So yeah, he calls the timeout in the comics, calls it out in the show, and then they sit and have a convo on the moon, which is just weird to think about. It's like, oh yeah, I'm on the moon and I'm talking to this alien. But yeah, so it's just absolutely, I love Alan. I love that they brought him in at this point of the show, and they had their fight, and so yeah, I just absolutely love it, and love pretty much just about everything else about the episode. Just again, the real big thing that I can't stand that guy. I just can't stand wasting precious time on that. Not a stupid story. But yeah, absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal work so far. And again, the rest of the series is going to stay up to snuff as well, as far as I'm concerned. If not, we wouldn't be talking about it. But anybody with any questions for us about any of our biblical lessons or anything that we've talked about in this episode, or if you wanted to discuss anything else, ranging from anime, comics, just feel free to email us at frickityfracktalkback@gmail.com, or reach out to us on Twitter at frickityf or at frickityfrack on Instagram and Facebook. Remember that God loves you. We love you. And all right, let's put on some pants and let's get into the sky.